Okay, there we go. All right, welcome to the Lowdown with Tony Lowe. Click like and subscribe. I don't even know what episode this is. I've lost count. But we are here with Julian Mack, an activist and a man who stands and has organized with Black Lives Matter, with the community solidarity response, and has worked on initiatives in Toledo, Ohio, such as Network Sensible Toledo, Move to Amend, and the Lake Erie Bill of Rights. Currently, for those who may not know, Julian is running for the Toledo City Council. And we've had a little shakeup. There has been some rampant corruption, bribery. We had members stepping down and wondering who's going to step in. And this could be that man. How you doing tonight?
All things considered, in this ball of confusion, I'm hanging in there. I'm doing all right.
This is a crazy time in America. As we speak, just yesterday, Kamala Harris was chosen to be a vice presidential candidate. We are still up to our necks in a pandemic, and things are weird.
Yeah.
Well, I think let's start here. Let's start with a little background, and then we can kind of dial into some issue-related stuff. So
Sure.
I put it out to Hive Mind and asked some people what they wanted me to ask you, and the first thing was just kind of, what's your story? You know, you're a Toledo dude, you're a Rogers guy, a Ram. Tell me everything.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see how much time you got. So I'm a born and raised Toledoan. I'm a product of, my father, a UAW worker, and a small business owner. My mother, a librarian, and who's also, I guess you could say, woke. Yeah, we'll say that. At least for a time, right? And so, I guess to give you my beginning is, my mom was in college in 1969, which I think is the greatest year of the 20th century, right? She was one of the first Black RAs at BGSU. She was there at the same time the Black Student Union started and all of these things. So her view of the world helped shape mine, right? And I was one of those babies, and I was born in 84, but when Jesse Jackson ran in 88, I was one of those babies with a Jesse Jackson for President sticker on, right? And in the first grade, my first protest, which was my mom's idea. I can't say and take credit I was this woke in the first grade, but my mom put black electrical tape over the Nike sign to protest the apartheid in South Africa.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, from that, I was, that's kind of the Black radical tradition I come from, right? And so, when I was like around 11 or 12, I was involved in a program called Youth Democracy Corps with Marcy Kaptur. And it really helped change my worldview, right? It never really seemed unique to me to be politically engaged, right? My favorite subject was always social studies. I've always enjoyed, I guess you could say, sociology, understanding why things are the way they are in society, right? We didn't just end up this way. There's a reason why things are this way.
Right.
And so I was in the Youth Democracy Corps where I got to meet Lech Walesa, the president of Poland, different Olympians and things like that. I remember going to my first political rally I think it was in '96 when the day before Bill Clinton gave his speech at the DNC, he stopped in Toledo.
Wow.
And yeah, right where Promenade Park is. And I had never seen anything quite like that, right? I remember the lights being so bright. I remember not being able to, the signs that said no glass bottles, right? And, I even remember in '92 being able to stay up late when he was, to see his acceptance speech, right? And so, like I have always been involved. And in the teenage years, I, was on city council. I was on school council, right?
Sure.
And I would work on like different, go door to door, knocking on people's doors for different school levies. And in high school, I worked on Jack Ford's campaign. I think at that point in time, he was running for state rep. So, I think I've been kind of politically involved since really and able to kind of think for myself since I was about 12 or 13. To continue that story, I went to college, was college Democrats. I went to BG, then went to UT. I was college Democrats president. And then what I like to say is life happened, right? And, I have two beautiful daughters. I had some ups and downs with school, had some ups and downs with depression, had some ups and downs with just life, right? And so, and I worked on Obama's campaign too, local campaigns, like been kind of for county commissioner and all of that. And so, but after life kicked in, so there was this, this neoliberal, moderate mindset that almost was, I think my mom came from a Black radical tradition, right? This idea that we were happy with Democrats and Clinton and things like that. And then, right, so full disclosure, right, I was a pothead in college, right? And I got pulled over in predominantly white neighborhoods. One time outside of BG, and the other time outside of Toledo, like Springfield Township, both by state troopers. And I got two DUIs for simply possessing marijuana in the car, right? Drastically changed my life, right? More than anything, my life was never been the same since. And so I didn't drive because I was terrified I was terrified of that third OVI, and I realized how easily it could happen, right? I mean, one time they took me down and they asked for my urine. You know what I mean? They asked for my urine, and that ended up holding up. But I really began to see the difference. Was treated from this Black middle class lifestyle to what it was like being introduced into what folks call the system. And I would see this disconnect between, the policies of Obama, who I had knocked over 10,000 doors for in 2008. And I began to wonder, and become frustrated and feel forgotten that these policies weren't affecting my day-to-day life. Right now, I did end up getting health insurance in 2012. Here's a fun story. I knocked on so many doors in 2008. I developed like a little bump on my middle finger, and it was terrible. Like every time I put my hand in my pocket, the scar would come back over, right, and my hand would start bleeding. Nobody wants to shake your hand; it's bloody, right? Even before COVID. Right. And so I was finally able to get that frozen and removed in 2013 after I finally had healthcare coverage, right?
Yeah.
And even with my bouts with depression, right? Like I was able to go seek therapy and things like that. So fast forward to 2012, after being on probation, after not driving, after having a lack of employment opportunities because of the situation I was in, right? And after being harassed, because once you're on probation, they can mess with you for anything, right? Like I remember one time we were looking at snacks too long in Circle K, and the cops pull up asking if we were trying to rob the place, right? And I got this whole thing on camera, right? And so, so in short, I felt like I was next. I felt like I was going to be the next Michael Brown.
So, hey, Julian, let me to illustrate your point.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't just goof around with a little bit of troublemaking as a young man. I went all the way in. My friends and I caused some real trouble and did some real dirt, and we did more than possess a little bit of weed, and never were followed by police we were constantly in trouble, always being reprimanded and called a bunch of troublemakers, but it's more like old people shaking us their cane at us and yelling.
Crazy kids in your jazz music.
Exactly. And exactly. And the few times that I did run into the law, in fact, one time they pulled a pretty large bag of, what could have been oregano, but it wasn't, out of a young lady's underwear who was in the car with us. That's where we were hiding it. And she volunteered that she had it. Nothing happened. Nothing ever happened. I never got in trouble with the law. Not ever. Of course, there were no police officers following us around. There were no police officers trained to target and seek us out. But just look at the difference there, because I probably caused a lot more trouble than you, and I never had to fear the police.
Yeah, I wasn't causing any trouble at all, actually. That's what's wild. Like, is some I would say there are some people in the establishment of local politics that may call me a troublemaker, right? But the way I started on this journey was doing things their way, the way they wanted it to be done, right? Following the path and serving the party as they saw fit, right? And trouble was really brought to me, right? And so yeah, man. I didn't really see, the wages I was making were insufficient, right? And caused other issues in my life where I felt like I haven't arrived yet. You know what I mean? Or I can't support and provide like I want to, which does a lot to the esteem of did a lot to my self-esteem.
If I'm hearing you correctly, and I'm gonna use a couple of common phrases that get said, and see if these are sentiments that are being reflected by what you say. I heard you use the word neoliberal, which I associate with kind of the Clintonian, Obama era, Democratic thing, and continued on with Biden, etc. But I think of that as kind of a global focus, interest in. It's rather a corporate way of solving problems. That, in other words, they're still funded by big companies and beholden to the stock market. And what I'm hearing you say is that you loved the representative nature of it, of having Obama in there, but we're frustrated by, and this I'm reading this part into what you said, frustrated by the need for this system or for players in the system who might have great intentions at first have to play inside of this incredibly large and dirty economic system. And so, in other words, that trickle down effect, whether it's in terms of money or opportunity or whatever, it just wasn't happening.
Yeah. So, I think increasingly, we've seen throughout my lifetime is the influence of corporations on politics, right? And while on maybe some social issues, things are rather divided right now. On many corporate issues, left wing and right wing seem to be two parts of the same bird, right? And serve the same master, which is the corporate elite in this country. So, I saw Wall Street get bailed out,
Yes.
but I still have student loans,
Yes.
and I didn't get bailed out, right? I would see, banks and houses get bailed out, but I couldn't afford to rent an apartment. You know what I mean? So, what are we electing and like, what are we I asked myself, what the hell was I putting this blood, sweat, and tears in for if it's not impacting my daily and the material conditions of my life? And that's what I would be very frustrated with. And I think, and I still, I got an Obama thing right here from 2012, right? I am nostalgic when it comes to the historical nature of the president of that presidency, and I think that there are some good things that were done, but we've reached a time where there needs to be a shift, and representation alone in itself cannot be the end all be all of electoral politics. There is a huge class battle that's going on right now that we need that needs to be focused on for a generation of people that have been left behind because of the focus and because of corporate greed. There's no other way to put it.
And I'm glad you said it that way. I think it's a corporate, there's a class division that is extraordinarily wide. And it's more than, I think there's a failure of many people who talk about it to also talk about it in terms of there's a perception of elites, meaning educated people who are from the collegiate system, people who have access to the stock market, people who are operating in this universe that's totally different from the working class. That isn't to say that the working class doesn't go to college. It's just that they're not, there's two games going on in this country. There's folks trying to get by, folks trying to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and then there's folks who are kind of coasting as COVID-19 destroys the economy in this country. Folks that are up here owning production and owning stock and investments, it doesn't even seem they don't even seem to be sweating.
Yeah, let me jump in there real quick, because you pointed out something that I think is very interesting, that I think some on the far right used to divide working class people. Now, I think that there are plenty of college-educated folks that are somehow labeled elitist because they sought out a higher education, right? And listen, I think that they're in the same. They're still working people, right? When I say elite, I mean the 1%, that, or the 0.001%, right? That I'm talking about your Jeff Bezos, your Mark Zuckerbergs, that are really pulling the strings here, right? There's developed like, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about the right, because I think that's almost a manipulative tool that's used to stop us from progressing our conversation on the left further. But there's an anti-intellectualism, right, that has taken hold on the right and is a problem, brother. It is a problem, right? They use it to deny climate change. They're using it to deny the legitimate deaths that are happening from COVID-19. Brother, it's a problem, right? And people are dying because of this, right? And so while there are legitimate criticisms of the higher educational system and the colonialized education, right, that we are indoctrinated with, let's not get it confused and think that people who are college educated are our enemy or are somehow the elite that are against us. No, the people who are we, the 48%, right, as I think Romney demonized back in 2012. We are the people that hold the collective, that really have the collective democratic power, but because of the corporate influence of those few ruling elite that own these corporations, right, they have found a way to keep working class people on the left and the right divided from realizing that they are the ones that are taking our money via corporate welfare, and the reason why we're struggling, and they're the reason why we're poor. We're the richest country in the world. Nobody should be poor, homeless, hungry, period. And it's their fault.
Right, because they're lazy, right. For example, to put a point on what you're saying, we watched Congress had a chance to talk to, Bezos and many Uber, and a handful, we had Zuckerberg, etc. And you see certain people like Jim Jordan trying to make the entire conversation about why are you censoring the language of the right, and talking and then interviewing, when they interviewed Fauci, Jim Jordan, same guy, talking about, why don't you think the protests are causing the outbreaks? And in both situations, it's very interesting, because when we have Congress people talking to Jeff Bezos and talking to social media folks about censorship, well, Congress has the power to enforce the Sherman Antitrust Act and take the power to censor them away. But instead, the conversation is being framed as a control of information. And what he's playing to is folks who have a suspicion of highly educated folks and scientists, and playing to their fears. We're going to end up, Julian, where we get people, not we, you and me, but America gets people so worked up over vaccines and anti-science silliness that we're going to wind up with making this COVID thing worse, or people getting in fights over we'll actually have the scientific ways to stop it, just like climate change, but people won't let it happen.
Absolutely, man. That's what we're looking at, and it's sad. And the thing is, the harsh reality is that whether we're talking about climate change and the consequences from it, or the consequences from a logical response to COVID-19, it's going to disproportionately have an impact on poor folks and on Black folks, and that's, I think, what this pandemic, right, is underlined specifically here in America, is the stratification of our different classes and the lack of equality, right, that exacerbates the conditions of an unequal society, right? So, these places that flood, it disproportionately affects the people who don't have a house on the hill, right? Uh, we see it with COVID, right? The people who are essential workers, who wages are barely, if we're lucky, a living wage, right? They're the ones who have to go in and save lives and keep society barely open, and it's sad. It's sad, but that comes from, that is, listen, this is no conspiracy theory, man. This is directly engineered. Listen, capitalism, the way it works is it has to exploit people, right? And that is the way our country gathered so much wealth in the first place, was by exploiting the free labor of slaves and black, people who for free labor, right? And we never stopped exploiting people's labor, just because, you know what I mean? And slavery just evolved into the modern prison system and the prison industrial complex.
And let me cut in here and
Yeah.
say, because right away, I already know if people are listening, they think that's a wild stretch, but it is in fact literally the history of this country. And there's, people can have opinions about who do we hold accountable and how and why and etc. But whatever that conversation looks like, there's no denying the history of this country. We had an economy where my grandfather went and fought in World War II. I'm only going that far back. He came back and he benefited from the GI Bill. He got free education. At that time in this country, the corporate tax was, I think it was in the 80, or it was FDR in the New Deal. It was like 80 some percent. Like, he ramped up production in this country, and all of that economical growth. This is post slavery, all of that, and yet all of that was enjoyed. All of the benefits of that incredibly booming economy, these were things that were benefiting my family, but not your ancestors in this country.
No, and the redlining, right? Like, we can bring up redlining that happens directly after World War II, right? Where white communities were able to get, were given grants and home loans to live in certain areas, right? And why is that significant? Because the way that we fund schools is based on property taxes, right? And the segregation, schools are more segregated today than they were in 1955 with Brown versus Board of Education. And the results of the inequities that we see in our public school system are directly to this day connected to redlining in the post-Civil War era. Right, and that's still why our communities are so segregated.
I like to point out to people that
this is America.
Even if you have a white family who worked hard, who did pull themselves up by their bootstraps, they did so in an economic system that was making money that had money injected into it from the work of 100% of the people, with massive benefit going to only some people. There's no way around that. Those some people are going to get a lot more bang for their buck for their work than the people getting left out. This is like just so obvious. But people really cling to this idea of a post-racial America where, and I understand the intoxication of it, because it lets me say, hey, racism is over. What I have, I earned completely on my own, or my dad did, or whatever. And it allows people who haven't had a chance to fight for their what they want yet, or maybe they're kind of down, uh, living in poverty. It gives them an opportunity to say, I can make it. I can jump to a different, economic status. It's so rare to leave the class that you are born into in America. We are born into a spot, and very, very few people in a generation move up. And if you're a black or a brown skinned American and you manage to move up, I mean, I forget the percentage. I think it's only like 20% can hang on for that entire generation before they get knocked right back down into the class they started in.
Yeah, and specifically, man, there's this millennial generation, right, is the first generation to have less, right, than their predecessors, right, than their parents, right? And I think what we're seeing, and I think what is at the core of this young progressive movement that we see with people like the Squad, right? Shout out to AOC and Rashida Tlaib. Shout out to Cory Bush.
Yes, and now
like me.
Yep. The Justice Democrats are taking seats.
Yeah, and we're coming for them because, I think it took us a minute, honestly, because and I think a lot of people were like me, man. We may have thought that maybe we weren't working hard enough. Maybe we weren't doing things right. Like, why am I not, my parents at this point in time in their life had a house, had two cars, had the college paid off. Why am I struggling and seem like I'm spinning my wheels in place? And, so many of us, I think, of this kind of millennial age and younger and some older, are figuring it out, that the system has been rigged and we've been fed a lie, and the American dream has become a nightmare because the tools for upward mobility have been taken from us, right? And we're stuck, right? But we realize the only way we get unstuck is by our collective solidarity, and by realizing who the real masters of the system is, and taking them out.
Can I cut in with some locally pertinent stuff, because you are about to step into city council, hopefully. And so let me just cut right to the chase. And I'm going to ask this question differently than most people are going to ask you, because people are going to right away walk through this door of clickbait separation, and I'm not going to do that. So the question that people are going to ask you is, do you support the defund the police movement? I'm going to ask it a different way. I'm going to ask you this. What is an appropriate way of funding a police force so that the police and the communities are safe together? In other words, that people feel safe calling the police, and that the police have actual tools to respond appropriately, besides Israeli military training and heavy weaponry.
That's the question. I appreciate giving me a chance to give some depth and weight and all of that to the topic at hand. So, what we have to look at here, man, is, we have seen an expansive role, first off, of policing here in America, right? The old days, like, I saw a picture once with what, and this isn't to say that, there wasn't racism with policing in the 50s and 60s, because, listen, we got I know some older folks that got the scars to prove it, right? And rest in peace to John Lewis, who recently passed, who was a freedom fighter who never stopped and dedicated his life to that struggle. But they look completely different. You know, they like the cops that would walk the beat, right, back in the day don't look like these. There are stormtroopers, right, that show up when we're demanding equality, right, with tanks and with all types of body armor. So, you know, one, I think we have to look at the role of the war on drugs, right, which is in modern day Jim Crow. We cannot ignore the impact that has had on families, on different generations. A lot of Black men in of my age had fathers that growing up they didn't know why they lacked consistency. Okay, and owing to when they got older, they, you know, and now we're seeing that it was a result of an intentional government program and policies that targeted a certain demographic of people.
And this again is documented. This is not a conspiracy theory.
No, man.
First of all, we can start with you know, proxy wars in Central America that were majorly profitable and causing all of these folks to flee their country, seeking refuge. I know people personally, a few whose parents came to this country to flee gang violence and drug cartels or abusive, you know, crime that was rampant as they were profiting by selling those drugs in the illegal street market of the United States of America. They come over here, and this causes gang wars. We know about drug running, even under some of the Democrat leadership. You know, I'm not leaving anyone free of judgment on this. You know, gun running and all kinds of things, deciding which cartel should win, supporting one over another. And people come over here, and then it's been known for a long time, and I can't remember if it was Lee Atwater or who it was, but we've heard recordings of people speaking about it, how if we can associate the radical hippies and the Black people in those communities with this dirty crime of drugs, then we can oppress them. In other words, we can discredit them as a political force, which is what they really, really were. So all of those in the 60s, all of those uprisings of people were discredited by criminalizing the drugs that went along with those movements.
Exactly, right. And that, I think specifically in the Midwest, when you see the closing down of factories, right, and all across the Rust Belt, when, you know, in this society where I think a lot of men are used to be or are taught and conditioned in this, you know, patriarchal society that we're supposed to be the breadwinners, and all of a sudden the bread, you can't find any bread,
Yeah.
right? You know, that exacerbates the conditions and ends up making one mentally desperate, right? Poverty is when the money's available, poverty is violence, right? And what that does, I mean, that worked on the psyche, right? So people who couldn't cope with that turned to drugs, right? And some of those people obviously sold the drugs, right? And you know, and, you know, I heard you bring up the idea of the well, you know, the cocaine coming from Central America, basically, and things like that. But also, man, brother, a lot of this was weed. You know what I mean? I saw a story about a brother that's doing life for a bag of weed still to this day. I think in Michigan, where it's legal, right? We just saw, I think his name is Pete Candence, pay for the entire senior class of Scott High School to go to college. Look at what he does. He sells weed, right? So, so I mean, also as we look at the legitimizing, right, what still is in many ways a black market industry, into, I mean, the whole thing of exploitation of people and labor is still happening right now again. And it's happening in the cannabis industry also, where they're gentrifying the dollars from what has been, in a lot of ways, a black market business that has helped. You know, I don't think, you know, I really don't think there's too many really big like weed dealers, but it would help people go from maybe poverty to middle class, right? And we're seeing that the gentrification of those dollars to corporate white America, right? And we're seeing the destruction of what should have been a legitimate hustle all the time, you know, this entire time. And so, you know, I think that's something that we have to be aware of as we go into the future. And if I'm lucky enough to be on city council, I mean, that's something that I would definitely particularly like want to keep an eye on, to make sure that as we're legitimizing the industry, which we obviously should do, right? But we have to make sure that those dollars go to help the communities that they destroyed, right, by a false war on drugs, which oftentimes ended up being a war on marijuana. So yeah, man.
And let's be clear. Black folks are not smoking more weed than white folks. They are getting followed around, checked up on, arrested, and prosecuted for it way more.
Absolutely. And see, here's the thing, brother. You know, I've seen the result of this, right? Like, so when we talk about these neoliberal policies, and when we talk about a man that I grew up looking up to, right, Bill Clinton, when we talk about the policies and how that criminalized my life and just existing, basically by classifying me as a super predator and having laws that reinforced it, you know, I think the collective consciousness of our country, and our community has become aware of what's happened. Right? That's why we see demonstrations. I went to a demonstration in Ottawa Hills, Perrysburg, Maumee, right? All of these like predominantly white places. But we haven't changed any laws yet. It's still functioning in the same way, right? So until that changes, we got a problem here, brother. And it's going to take radical change. Yeah.
Sorry to cut in on you. This is good. So Toledo, Ohio. What does the community need city council to get behind to make this reallocation of police funding into the community a doable thing? And I think there's a way to talk about it that police will be excited about, because we do give them too much to handle, and we give them the wrong kind of training, and we have situations like Officer Dia getting killed. And I was saying, you know, he did nothing wrong. He did everything he was trained to do. He's an example of a solid police officer doing what he should have probably done based on his training. And if we know we've got a repeat unstable individual with a history of having a gun, where's the social worker support? Where is the de-escalation skills? Where's that training? So my question for you.
So that's something I'll even jump in and talk about, right? The signs that man that killed Officer Dia needed help are very clear. If you just look at his rap sheet, like within months ago, he was urinating like on somebody's front lawn. And I mean, it was clear he had substance abuse and mental health issues. And we as a society are failing these people, right? I mean, listen, I believe in the humanity of every single life. And I do believe that, you know, in order for all lives to matter, Black lives must matter. In order for Black lives to matter, all Black lives must matter, right? But like, we're losing people to failures and gaps in our system that don't exist, right? Right now, if you're having mental health emergency, right, they'll tell you to go to rescue, you know, sit you down for a couple days. If you agree to that, right, we need more mental health. It needs to be easier, right, in order to get help. It's not as easy as it should be, and it's because over decades we have defunded mental health treatment, right? We have defunded education, right? We have defunded essentially the social safety net that makes our community safer, right? This isn't anti-police rhetoric, right? Police don't, for the most part, prevent crime, right? They respond to it, right? Like, there's been these incidents at Swainfield and at the docks, right? People keep complaining about, like, what are they gonna do? I mean, listen, I've been there a couple times, right? Because I believe in being among, right, common folks and common people. The police are right across the street when this stuff goes down, right? They're not preventing crime; they respond to it. So my thing is, and we need people to respond to crime, right? I'm not saying that. I'm not advocating at this point in time for dismantling or abolition at this point in time, right? That is an ideal that I think many activists want to move in that direction, and I get that. But the infrastructure doesn't exist for that to happen tomorrow, right? So I think what we do need to do, though, is we have to invest in what can prevent these situations from happening in the first place, right? How do we prevent the desperation of crimes of poverty, right? How do we prevent homelessness? How do we prevent starvation, right? How many crimes happen? I saw this brother. And I don't know the details of it, but I saw a brother just at Winterfield basketball court. Looks like it was a dice game or a basketball game that was happening on the side, and someone got shot, man. I mean, like, listen, this system is designing itself so that people feel like their lives do not matter. When people don't have the tools, as you were saying earlier, to be upwardly mobile or change their station or to be able to adequately provide for their family, a sense of desperation kicks in. And that is bad for everybody in that community. And so what we have to do as a functioning body in this municipality, meaning city council, is we have to have actual policies that reaffirm the value of lives that had been devalued, right? So people who are at risk, people who are not mentally stable, we have to reaffirm those resources and that social safety net, because especially in times like this, where, listen, people don't know if they're going to have a roof over their head next month. You know what I mean? Anybody who's ever been in, I've slept in my car, right? Because I haven't spent a long time homeless, but I've spent a few nights homeless before, and nothing's like that desperation, right? When when you can't keep running your car for heat in the park, and you got to put a jacket on just to be cold. Or just to be warm. That is desperation, and desperate people commit desperate acts for their own protection. And that is human. You know what I mean? And so we got to realize the humanity in all people, and that hasn't been done. That hasn't been done.
I would love to live in a city, in a world, but in a city where when people call the police, they're calling them because they expect and can reasonably expect that the police are coming to protect, to serve, and to uphold peace, rather than calling them for revenge and punitive justice. We have a system of punitive justice where we've been wronged. So now we're calling someone with power to come and exact revenge for us from the person that hurt us, rather than wouldn't it be cool if we were calling on our local, in other words, not just from our city, but from our neighborhood, our local support folks who are police, who come to de-escalate violence. Hey man, I've got this problem. Things are going to pop off if we don't resolve this. And we have skills for moderating, for mediating. And when I lived in Oakland, California, when things were happening to my friends of color, I know a guy that got hit by a car and it broke his leg, but the driver was white, so he didn't call the police.
Mm.
And I said, I don't understand. You could get this paid for. You know what I mean? Like, you could seek redress, and they're like, it's too risky. It's too risky. There's just too much that can go wrong in a situation where the police respond to an event like that for me.
And I think that what you're also seeing at this difficult time is people working on building our own institutions, right? So you're seeing things like mutual aid networks, people, I guess, recommitting themselves to block watches, but in a different way than just a block watch to call the police, but a block watch for can we protect our own neighborhood safety, and I think that's what it's going to take. That's what it's going to take. But I think the people who are most directly affected and impacted are experts at their own struggle. So when you have a localized, when you can localize the resources, I think they will be more effectively used, right? And so the key to this, I think, is organizing in different neighborhoods and allowing different neighborhoods to be able to say what they need and giving them the tools and resources in order to do so, to successfully have neighborhood safety, right? I think people know what they need when you ask them.
What do you think about the Toledo police? They have a program, I think they call it beat integrity. And it means that police are walking, if they have a beat, that beat stays the same. So, and the idea is that they're supposed to know their community and be plugged into what's going on. I don't get the sense from my friends in Toledo that that's what's happening. So what would have to happen to make something like that a doable and reasonable, workable policy?
Woo. So, you know, I've really been trying to work on my relationship with the police. Right, myself, right? There's been, a few incidences in the past where have been polarizing and for me, and I think people get this idea that I'm anti-police, not realizing that my cousin is running for sheriff, and shout out to Earl Mack, right? He's running for Lucas County.
I've seen the posters.
Yeah, and so like I have been kind of going out my way to try to engage and talk with officers and know who's patrolling the neighborhood and things like that. And it does make a difference. Now that takes a little extra commitment on my part, and that takes a little extra commitment from the police officer's part. And I don't know how you institute that on there has to be a want to do it on a basic human level to realize that this is a societal problem and maybe there's something I can do individually to help bridge this gap. And a police officer has to realize that, hey, maybe there's something I can do individually. And, it's hit or miss, frankly. I'll share with you a real story. This happened about a week or two ago. So, like I said, I think so. There has been, and I think there will continue to be a lot of criticism, right, of the brothers and sisters that hang out at Swainfield or the docks, and understandably so, because some of those been a handful of those nights that have ended up very violent, where people have been shot and things like that, which is terrible, and we need to prevent that. But I don't know if you've ever seen the docks at night. It's one of the most beautiful places in Lucas County, right? They spent, I think, over $100,000 on all these lights on the Anthony Wayne Bridge, and it's beautiful. I don't know how you can chase people away from wanting to enjoy that site. So maybe I'll get in trouble for this. I don't know. And I should watch my mouth. But I believe in transparency and honesty. So even though the park's closed, I'll go up there. I've got my new ear pods. I'm working on this new playlist, this activist playlist on Tidal. And I'll go up there and kind of just meditate, right? And look at the bridge and get my mind away from all the mace on the front lines and loud bullhorns, and try to clear my head, right? Self-care is key. And in doing this work, it's important to take moments out to like enjoy life, right?
Oh yeah.
I've looked at it over the years. Just like I said, especially to fight off that depression. A lot of people are depressed right now, so you got to take those moments. And so the docks gets packed, right? Sure enough, just like clockwork, I don't think any incident happened. Once it reaches past capacity, past the parking lot, bam, here come the police, right? And so I'll walk over there after it clears out. Walk over there. I'm like, what happened? And they say, do you want to get arrested? I'm like, Nope. Just ask what happened. I think actually something did happen that night. A gun went off. All right. Like I was just asking, I was using this time I was riding one of those new Toledo Go bikes, which I think is a great idea, but people aren't using it, right? I think we should double down on these things that are fun in Toledo. And so I'm like, no, I don't want to get arrested. And they basically told me to get the hell out of there, which I did. I complied. But so then, like 2 or 3 days later, I was riding around on the bike again. And I was on, I rode past the docks, didn't spend much time there because there was a shooting. They were shooting a couple of nights before. So I go up on the high level bridge and I'm just kind of watching people from there. And sure enough, 2 police officers come up and they start standing right next to me watching. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, we post up here to watch everybody and watch what's going on. I'm like, yeah, I came by the other night. And he was like, oh, yeah, my bad. That was me. Sorry if I was hurt. We just get tired of doing this all the time. I'm like, oh, I get it. If it was doing this every night, it would get on my nerves too. And so and while I think there should be a level of professionalism that should occur, but like those are the kinds of ways that we're kind of trying to take down and build these bridges that happen on an interpersonal level. And I don't know, man. I don't know if everybody in the city is going to have that conversation like I had and react like I did. And I don't know if every officer is going to be like, yo, my bad. We were having a day, So, but here's the thing. There are institutional things that can change right away. Right? Like the Right to Know Act, shout out to Councilman Comines to that. We can end no-knock warrants. We can give the Civilian Review Board actual power, right? The police serve the civilians. The civilians should have power, right? We have to get rid of the barriers to police accountability via the union contract. That's up this year, right? I think it's important. I think they're negotiating it right now. Right,
so
and
Julian,
I think it's important to have a makeup on city council that takes the approval of that contract very seriously.
So wait,
right?
Julian,
and
wait.
Barriers like at the yeah.
Hold on. Your audio is cutting out a little bit, and you're frozen.
Lagging.
Yeah. So you can hear me okay, though, right? Let me see if I just want to make sure that you're being heard. So you said no-knock warrants and definitely police accountability. I heard you say that the citizens have to have power, that the union contracts you said those are coming up or being negotiated?
Yes, I do believe they're being negotiated right now, and which means they'll have to be approved by city council in the near future.
Okay. Do you feel confident that you can pull this off? If you go in there, do you feel like you can have a voice that they will hear when it comes to making police reforms that aren't so triggering? Because we say defund the police and they just won't even start. It won't even begin. Are you going to be able to talk to them about this?
Yeah, man. What I want to do, I want to take beyond just being on city council. I think it's time to take the position, frankly, to the 21st century, man. City council has to do a better job at keeping citizens informed. And I think one thing that I plan to do that's unique is to keep people more informed. People can tell you 10 things they don't like about Trump. Can't tell you, well, this year they can tell you things about city council. But traditionally can't tell you 2 things about city council, or what's the county commissioner doing, or what's the mayor doing, what's their state rep done. And so what I want to do is really bridge that gap. I think information is the key to our democracy, and misinformation is the enemy of our democracy. And so I think it's key that, so people that go to macforus.com, and if you sign up for my newsletter, I will do everything I can do to keep you informed. And what I want to do is, look, I'm an activist. I'm a community organizer at heart. And so I want to enlarge this progressive voice in Toledo that I think is strong and been growing over years. Right? There is give me just a second here, Tony. Here's what we have to realize has always been the duality of Toledo. It's James Ashley and Morrison R. Waite. All right? James Ashley, who was our rep in Congress, was a staunch abolitionist. He wrote the 13th Amendment, the first draft of the 13th Amendment, okay? He was there as a witness to John Brown's hanging, right? He freed slaves by taking them on a sled across Lake Erie in the middle of winter. At the same time, practically the same time, right, you have Morrison R. Waite, who was a Supreme Court justice, who essentially led the effort as the Chief Supreme Court Justice to end Reconstruction by getting rid of the Civil Rights Act of 1875. Northwest Ohio and Ohio is the first place of all the places in the world that was colonized and conquered by America, right? We have these dualities where it was free territory, but we would return slaves back to the South. We have an opportunity, I think right now, we see these 2 dualities when we see Trump rallies here, and we see all these progressive activists and progressive organizers, and we know that this can be a strong union town and have solidarity, but we have to stick together and mobilize and hold those in leadership accountable. So what I want to do is enlarge. Look, I'm unapologetically Black. I'm unapologetically activist. I'm unapologetically working class. And I think that voice needs to be enlarged on city council. And so what I want to do is inform people and mobilize people for that type of legislation, for people to realize that there's support for that type of transformative legislation to go through.
All right. I have to cut in again just because we're deteriorating quality wise, and I don't want to lose. I feel like we may end up losing people's attention as it kind of deteriorates.
Yeah.
So, but I think the audio was good enough that people heard your message, and we're just going to have to do this again. We're going to have to speak again.
That's fine.
So
I like questions.
In the meantime, Mack for us, and that's a number 4, right?
No, Mack for us. F-O-R. M-A-C-K. MackForUS.com.
MackForUS.com. And you can watch a video there about Julian Mack. You can learn about his history in Toledo, some of the things he's offering, and you see what I think is a genuine person speaking for Toledo. And I think that one of the most important things about government when it comes to evaluating them is, do they represent their constituents? And I think it's important to represent the people that you mean to, and also, as you say, educate and push to the leading edge. That's what it is to be a leader, to say, okay, I know that we're perceiving this reality this way. There are possibilities. What if we did this? And you win the people to you and you put it to action. And I think that's what you're trying to do. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you, man. It's been a pleasure being here. Remember, all power to the people, and the people have all the power. And all lives can't matter unless Black lives matter. I love y'all.
Thank you so much.
Go to MackForUS.com.
Do it. I'm going to hit the stop recording button, and